Welcome to Professor Joe's Education Channel and Advocacy, a philosophy lecture series. This channel is the author's collection of philosophy lecture series for student and classroom purposes. A disclaimer is provided to ensure that all information on the site and our mobile application is provided in good faith. We make no representation or warranty of accuracy in any kind, expressed or implied. Thank you.
The abortion debate continues to be a prominent and contentious issue in our society. It sparks heated discussions and shapes political landscapes. The heart of the matter lies in deeply held beliefs about life, morality, and personal autonomy. This debate is not merely theoretical. It has real-world implications for women, families, and the very fabric of our communities. The legal landscape surrounding abortion is constantly shifting. Some states have attempted to impose restrictions, while others staunchly defend a woman's right to choose. Court cases and legal challenges further complicate the matter. This ongoing legal battle highlights the high stakes and the profound impact this issue has on people's lives. At the crux of the abortion debate lies the question of personhood. This philosophical concept delves into the moral status of an entity and its entitlement to rights. Assigning personhood to an entity like a fetus has profound implications. It determines how we as a society view its moral worth and the obligations we owe to it. This question of personhood is central to both sides of the abortion debate. Those who identify as pro-choice often argue that a fetus, especially in its early stages, does not meet the criteria for personhood. Conversely, those who are pro-life often contend that a fetus from the moment of conception possesses the inherent qualities of a person. The debate hinges on fundamental moral principles. Pro-choice advocates often prioritize a woman's right to bodily autonomy and her right to make decisions about her own body and reproductive health. They argue that forcing a woman to carry an unwanted pregnancy to term violates these fundamental rights. Pro-life proponents often emphasize the sanctity of life, arguing that every human being from the moment of conception has an inherent right to life. They view abortion as the taking of an innocent life and a violation of the fundamental right to exist. This clash of moral values lies at the heart of the debate. The abortion debate is not about finding easy answers or simple solutions. It requires a nuanced understanding of complex philosophical concepts, legal precedents, and deeply held moral beliefs. By exploring the arguments from both sides, we can foster a more informed and compassionate dialogue on this highly charged issue. The pro-choice perspective often centers on the concept of personhood and what it means to possess the moral status of a person. Proponents of this view often argue that a fetus, particularly in its earlier stages of development, does not meet the criteria to be considered a person with full moral rights. They maintain that personhood is not solely defined by biological existence, but rather by a set of cognitive and experiential characteristics that emerge gradually over time. This line of reasoning often draws upon the work of philosophers like Mary Ann Warren, who proposed a set of criteria for personhood. Warren argued that traits like consciousness, the capacity for reasoning, self-awareness, and the ability to communicate are essential for an entity to be considered a person with a right to life. According to this perspective, the absence of these traits in the early stages of fetal development suggests that abortion, especially within the first trimester, does not constitute the taking of a person's life. One of the central tenets of this pro-choice argument revolves around the concept of consciousness. Proponents highlight that consciousness, particularly the ability to experience sensations and feelings like pain and pleasure, is a fundamental aspect of personhood. They argue that without the capacity for subjective experience, a fetus cannot be considered a sentient being capable of suffering or having interests that need to be protected. While scientific understanding of fetal development continues to evolve, it is generally accepted that a fetus does not develop the capacity for consciousness until later stages of pregnancy. This understanding of fetal development bolsters the pro-choice argument, suggesting that early-term abortions occur before the fetus possesses the capacity for conscious experience. This distinction is crucial, as it implies that terminating a pregnancy before the emergence of consciousness does not inflict pain or suffering on a sentient being. Beyond consciousness, the pro-choice argument often emphasizes the significance of higher cognitive functions, such as reasoning and communication, in defining personhood. The ability to engage in complex thought processes, solve problems, understand abstract concepts, and communicate effectively are seen as hallmarks of personhood. These capacities enable individuals to form relationships, contribute to society, and lead meaningful lives. According to this perspective, the absence of these cognitive abilities in the early stages of fetal development further supports the argument that a fetus does not yet possess the full moral status of a person. Proponents point out that a fetus, even in the second trimester, lacks the cognitive maturity and self-awareness to engage in meaningful communication, understand its own existence, or form complex thoughts and desires. This lack of higher cognitive function, they argue, distinguishes a fetus from a person with full moral rights. Furthermore, the pro-choice perspective often stresses the importance of self-motivated action and autonomy in defining personhood. The ability to make independent choices, set goals, and pursue one's own desires is seen as a fundamental aspect of what it means to be a person. This capacity for self-determination and autonomy is closely tied to the concepts of free will and moral responsibility. Proponents of this view argue that a fetus, particularly in the early stages of development, lacks the capacity for self-motivated action. Its movements and development are primarily driven by biological processes rather than conscious choice or deliberate intent. This lack of autonomy, they contend, further distinguishes a fetus from a fully developed person capable of making independent decisions and bearing moral responsibility for its actions. Section 1. The pro-life perspective, potential personhood. The pro-life perspective on abortion often centers around a different understanding of personhood, one that emphasizes the potential for future development and the inherent value of human life from its very beginnings. While acknowledging that a fetus may not yet possess all the characteristics of a fully developed person, proponents of this view argue that its potential to become a person with full moral rights is sufficient to grant it protection. This perspective often draws upon a concept known as potential personhood, which asserts that an entity's future capacities and characteristics are morally relevant, even if they are not yet fully realized. This line of reasoning often begins with the assertion that a fetus, from the moment of conception, is a distinct and living human being. Proponents argue that the fetus possesses its own unique genetic code and the inherent capacity to develop into a fully formed human being. They contend that this potential for future personhood is not merely a hypothetical possibility, but rather an intrinsic characteristic of the fetus itself. This potential, they argue, carries significant moral weight and forms the basis for extending the right to life to the unborn. Section 2. Latent capacities, the seed of personhood. Central to the pro-life argument is the distinction between latent capacities and actualized capacities. While a fetus may not yet possess the actualized capacity for consciousness, reasoning, or self-awareness, pro-life advocates argue that it does possess these capacities in a latent or undeveloped form. They draw parallels to other examples, such as a sleeping person or a person in a coma, who may not be actively exercising their cognitive abilities, but are still considered persons with full moral rights. Just as a seed contains within it the potential to grow into a mature tree, possessing all the characteristics of its kind, pro-life advocates argue that a fetus possesses the latent capacity to develop the characteristics of personhood. They contend that the mere fact that these capacities are not yet fully developed does not diminish their moral significance. To deny a fetus the right to life based on its lack of actualized capacities, they argue, is akin to denying a seed the right to grow into a tree because it has not yet developed roots, a trunk, or leaves. Section 3. The moral significance of potential. The pro-life argument hinges on the belief that potential personhood carries significant moral weight. Proponents argue that it is morally wrong to intentionally end the life of an entity that has the potential to become a person with full moral rights. They contend that doing so is akin to robbing that entity of its future and denying it the opportunity to experience life and all its possibilities. This perspective often draws upon the inherent value of human life, arguing that every human being, regardless of their stage of development or current capacities, possesses intrinsic worth and dignity. Proponents argue that this inherent value stems from the unique nature of human life and its potential for growth, development, and the pursuit of meaning and purpose. To intentionally destroy a human life, even in its earliest stages, they contend, is a grave moral wrong that violates the fundamental principle of respect for human dignity. Section 4. Countering the pro-choice argument. Pro-life advocates often challenge the pro-choice argument by questioning the validity of using cognitive capacities as the sole criteria for personhood. They argue that focusing exclusively on traits like consciousness, reasoning, and self-awareness creates an arbitrary and discriminatory standard. They point out that this standard would exclude individuals who have temporarily lost these capacities due to injury, illness, or disability, as well as infants and young children who have not yet fully developed these abilities. Furthermore, pro-life advocates often argue that the pro-choice position fails to adequately address the moral status of the fetus as a living human being. They contend that even if one does not grant full personhood to the fetus, it still deserves some level of moral consideration and protection as a distinct and living organism. To argue that a woman has an absolute right to terminate a pregnancy, they contend, ignores the moral claims of the fetus and reduces it to a mere extension of the woman's body, devoid of any intrinsic value or rights. Section 1. The weight of unwanted pregnancies. The abortion debate takes on a particularly poignant dimension when considered in the context of unwanted pregnancies. The term itself carries a heavy weight, evoking feelings of fear, anxiety, and a sense of being trapped in a situation beyond one's control. For many women, an unwanted pregnancy represents a significant life disruption, potentially derailing education plans, career aspirations, or personal goals. The emotional toll can be immense, particularly when coupled with financial constraints, lack of social support, or the pressures of societal expectations. The reasons behind unwanted pregnancies are diverse and complex. They can range from contraceptive failure to sexual assault, from a change in relationship status to a reassessment of personal readiness for parenthood. Regardless of the reason, the experience of an unwanted pregnancy can be emotionally overwhelming, forcing women to confront difficult choices and navigate a complex web of emotions, beliefs, and practical considerations. The decision of whether or not to continue an unwanted pregnancy is deeply personal, often involving a heart-wrenching assessment of one's values, beliefs, and circumstances. The pro-choice perspective often emphasizes the importance of respecting a woman's autonomy and her right to make decisions about her own body and reproductive health, particularly in such challenging situations. Proponents of this view argue that forcing a woman to carry an unwanted pregnancy to term can have detrimental effects on her physical and mental well-being, as well as her future prospects. They maintain that women should have the right to make choices that align with their own values and circumstances, without undue interference from the government or other external entities. Conversely, the pro-life perspective often emphasizes the sanctity of life, arguing that every pregnancy, even those that are unplanned or unwanted, represents a precious human life deserving of protection. Proponents of this view often express concern that legalizing abortion, particularly in cases of unwanted pregnancies, could lead to a devaluation of human life and a disregard for the moral status of the unborn. They often advocate for alternatives to abortion, such as adoption, and emphasize the importance of providing support and resources to women facing unplanned pregnancies. Section 2. The dilemma of teenage pregnancies. Teenage pregnancies present another layer of complexity to the abortion debate. The unique vulnerabilities and challenges faced by teenagers in such situations raise specific ethical and social concerns. The physical, emotional, and social implications of teenage pregnancy can be particularly profound, often impacting education, future opportunities, and overall well-being. The stigma and social pressures surrounding teenage parenthood can be isolating, compounding the already challenging circumstances. From a pro-choice perspective, access to safe and legal abortion is often seen as crucial for protecting the health and well-being of pregnant teenagers. Proponents argue that denying teenagers this option could lead to unsafe abortions, increased risks of health complications, and long-term negative consequences for their education, economic prospects, and overall life chances. They emphasize the importance of empowering teenagers to make informed decisions about their reproductive health and providing them with comprehensive sex education and access to contraception to prevent unintended pregnancies. The pro-life perspective often approaches teenage pregnancies with a focus on providing support and guidance to young mothers. Proponents of this view may advocate for abstinence-based sex education, emphasize the importance of parental involvement, and encourage alternatives to abortion such as adoption. They often express concern that legalizing abortion for teenagers could lead to increased sexual activity, a devaluation of human life, and a lack of personal responsibility. They may also highlight the potential emotional and psychological consequences of abortion, particularly for young women who may be ill-equipped to cope with the emotional weight of such a decision. Section 3. Rape and the question of consent. The abortion debate becomes particularly charged when considering cases of rape. The horrific act of sexual assault represents a profound violation of a woman's autonomy and bodily integrity. Forcing a woman to carry a pregnancy resulting from rape to term can be seen as a continuation of that violation, compounding the trauma and inflicting further emotional and psychological harm. The pro-choice perspective often emphasizes the importance of respecting a woman's right to bodily autonomy and her right to make decisions about her own body and reproductive health, particularly in the aftermath of such a traumatic experience. Proponents of this view argue that forcing a woman to carry a pregnancy resulting from rape to term can have devastating psychological consequences, re-traumatizing her and impeding her healing process. They maintain that denying a woman access to abortion in such cases constitutes a further violation of her rights and ignores the profound emotional and psychological toll of sexual assault. They emphasize the importance of providing comprehensive support services to survivors of sexual violence, including access to emergency contraception, counseling, and legal assistance. The pro-life perspective often approaches cases of rape with a focus on the sanctity of life, arguing that even a pregnancy resulting from a horrific act like rape still represents a precious human life deserving of protection. Proponents of this view may argue that the circumstances of conception should not determine the moral status of the fetus or diminish its right to life. They may emphasize the importance of providing support and resources to women facing such difficult situations, including counseling, adoption services, and financial assistance. Section 1. Exploring alternatives. A multifaceted approach. The abortion debate often sparks discussions about alternatives to abortion, seeking solutions that address the complex circumstances surrounding unwanted pregnancies. These alternatives aim to provide women with viable options that align with their values, beliefs, and life plans. It's important to note that the effectiveness and accessibility of these alternatives can vary significantly depending on factors such as geographical location, socioeconomic status, and cultural attitudes. One of the most frequently discussed alternatives to abortion is adoption. Adoption involves a legal process in which parental rights are transferred from the biological parents to adoptive parents, providing a loving and stable home for a child whose biological parents are unable or unwilling to raise them. Another alternative is to carry the pregnancy to term and raise the child. This option requires significant emotional, physical, and financial resources, and it may not be feasible for all women, particularly those facing difficult socio-economic circumstances or lacking adequate social support. It is crucial to approach the discussion of alternatives to abortion with sensitivity and a recognition of the diverse challenges women face. What might be a viable option for one woman may not be suitable for another, and it is essential to respect individual choices and circumstances. Section 2. Adoption, a path to parenthood for others. Adoption offers a unique solution by providing a loving home for a child whose biological parents are unable or unwilling to raise them. This alternative allows women to choose not to parent, while also giving their child the opportunity to grow up in a stable and nurturing environment. Adoption agencies and organizations work to facilitate the process, providing counseling and support to both birth parents and adoptive parents throughout the journey. Open adoption, in which birth parents have some level of contact with their child and adoptive family, has become increasingly common, offering a way for birth parents to maintain a connection with their child while entrusting their upbringing to another family. Adoption can be a complex and emotionally charged process, but it offers a path to parenthood for individuals and couples who are unable to have biological children or who wish to provide a loving home for a child in need. However, it's important to acknowledge that adoption is not without its challenges. The decision to place a child for adoption can be incredibly difficult for birth parents, often accompanied by feelings of loss, grief, and uncertainty. Additionally, the adoption process itself can be lengthy and expensive, and there is no guarantee that a suitable adoptive family will be found quickly or easily. Section 3. Prevention, empowering women through education and access. While adoption and other alternatives provide options for women facing unplanned pregnancies, preventing unintended pregnancies in the first place is equally crucial. Comprehensive sex education plays a vital role in empowering individuals to make informed decisions about their sexual health and reproductive choices. By providing accurate information about contraception, sexually transmitted infections, and healthy relationships, comprehensive sex education equips young people with the knowledge and skills they need to make responsible choices. Access to affordable and reliable contraception is also essential in preventing unintended pregnancies. Contraceptives, such as birth control pills, condoms, and intrauterine devices, IUDs, provide individuals with the means to control their fertility and plan their families according to their own desires and circumstances. However, financial barriers, limited access to healthcare providers, and cultural stigmas can hinder access to contraception, particularly for young people, low-income individuals, and marginalized communities. Addressing these barriers and ensuring equitable access to reproductive healthcare services is essential for promoting reproductive autonomy and reducing the incidence of unintended pregnancies. Section 1. Navigating the nuances. The abortion debate is a testament to the complexities inherent in grappling with fundamental questions of life, morality, and personal autonomy. The arguments presented by both pro-choice and pro-life advocates reveal deeply held beliefs about the nature of personhood, the value of human life, and the role of individual rights in society. There are no easy answers or simple solutions to be found in this ongoing debate. Each side raises valid points that warrant careful consideration. The pro-choice emphasis on a woman's right to bodily autonomy and her right to make decisions about her own reproductive health resonates with the fundamental principles of individual liberty and self-determination. The pro-life focus on the sanctity of life and the inherent value of every human being, regardless of its stage of development, speaks to a profound respect for human dignity and the potential for life to unfold. The debate often hinges on the elusive concept of personhood, a concept that continues to be debated by philosophers and ethicists. Ultimately, navigating the abortion debate requires a nuanced understanding of the complex moral, philosophical, and social issues at play. While this essay has aimed to present a balanced overview of the arguments from both sides, it is essential to recognize that individual beliefs and values will inevitably shape one's stance on this highly charged issue. As a society, we must strive to engage in respectful dialogue, acknowledging the deeply held beliefs on both sides of the debate, while also seeking common ground and compassionate solutions that address the diverse needs and circumstances of women facing unplanned pregnancies.
Thanks for watching Professor Joe's Education Channel and Advocacy. A full fair use copyright disclaimer statement is provided here. Thank you.